The final days of the Prophet and the question of leadership. The city of Madinah in the 11th year after the Hijrah was filled with both peace and uncertainty. The message of Islam had spread across the Arabian Peninsula. Tribes that once fought endless wars now prayed side by side in the same rows. Yet the unity that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had established was still young and fragile. Many of the new Muslims had embraced Islam only recently after the conquest of Makkah, and their faith had not yet faced great trials. The Prophet's leadership was the heart of this unity, and everyone knew that without him the strength of the Ummah could be tested in ways they could not imagine. Only a few months before his final illness, the Prophet performed his farewell pilgrimage, known as Hajj al-Wada. On the plains of Arafat, he delivered a sermon that would be remembered for all time. He reminded the believers that all Muslims are brothers, and that no Arab is superior to a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab to an Arab except in piety. He stressed the importance of holding fast to the Quran and his Sunnah. His words carried hints that his mission was complete and that he might not be with them much longer. But many companions did not fully understand the weight of those words. Soon after returning to Medina, signs of illness appeared. The Prophet began to suffer from fever and weakness. At first he continued to lead the prayers and guide the people, but over the days his condition worsened. He instructed Abu Bakr to lead the prayers in his place when he could no longer stand before the people. This was a significant decision, and some companions took it as a sign of who might lead the community after him. Others did not make such a connection and believed leadership would be decided later by mutual agreement. During his illness, there was an incident remembered as the Thursday event. The Prophet asked for pen and paper so that he could write something for the Muslims that would prevent them from going astray after him. Some companions felt it was unnecessary because the Quran and the guidance already given were enough, while others wished to bring the writing materials immediately. Disagreement arose in the presence of the Prophet, and the voices of some companions grew loud. The Prophet told them to leave and said that it was better not to quarrel in his presence. This moment remained in the memories of many and later would be interpreted differently by various groups. The fever grew worse, and the Prophet spent his final days in the room of Aisha. News of his weakness spread through Madinah, and sadness filled the hearts of the believers. Still, there was hope that he might recover as he had in earlier illnesses. On one morning he felt slightly better and went to the mosque supported by two companions. The Muslims saw him enter, and their faces lit with joy. Abu Bakr stepped back to let him lead the prayer, but the Prophet motioned for him to continue. After the prayer, the Prophet addressed the people with gentle words, reminding them of their duties and the reward of patience. As the days passed, his strength faded. On Monday morning, the Prophet lifted the curtain of Aisha's room and saw the Muslims standing in prayer behind Abu Bakr. He smiled and they felt comforted. That was the last time many saw him alive. Later that day, he lay back in Aisha's arms and uttered his final words about the companionship of the Most High. Then his blessed soul departed, and the room fell into grief and disbelief. When the news spread across Medina, shock took hold. Some companions could not believe he had passed. Umar ibn al-Khattab stood in the mosque declaring that anyone who said Muhammad had died was lying and that he had only gone to meet his Lord as Musa had done and would return. It was Abu Bakr who calmed the people. He entered the room of Aisha and kissed the Prophet's forehead, saying, "You are beautiful in life and death." Then he came out to the mosque and recited the verse from the Quran that Muhammad is but a messenger, and many messengers have passed before him. And if he dies or is killed, will you turn back on your heels? The people listened, and it was as if the truth had finally pierced the fog in their hearts. Umar sat down and wept out the passing of the Prophet, left the Muslims with deep sorrow but also with an urgent question. Who would lead them now that the one chosen by Allah was gone? Leadership was not just about guiding prayers. The new leader would need to defend the community against enemies, manage the distribution of wealth, judge disputes, and ensure the spread of Islam continued. There was no clear written instruction naming a successor. Some believed the appointment of Abu Bakr to lead the prayers was an indirect sign. Others believed that Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet, who had been with him from the earliest days of Islam, was the rightful choice. The Ansar, the helpers of Medina, who had welcomed the Prophet and the Muhajirin into their city, felt they had sacrificed much for Islam and deserved a say in leadership. The Muhajirin, the emigrants from Makkah, had been with the Prophet from the beginning of the mission and had endured years of persecution. Each group had its claims and its respected leaders. As the sun set over Medina on that day of grief, city stood on the edge of a decision that would shape the history of the Muslim world. The unity of the believers depended on what would happen next, and in the shadows of mourning, the first discussions of leadership began quietly among the companions. No one knew that these early conversations would plant the seeds of a division that centuries later would still be felt among Muslims across the world. The Saqifah meeting and Abu Bakr's election, passing of the Prophet Muhammad, left Medina in a state of deep grief, yet the affairs of the Ummah could not remain unattended. While many companions stayed in the mosque overwhelmed by sorrow, a group of the Ansar gathered in a shaded hall known as Saqifah Banu Sa'idah. They were the helpers of Medina who had welcomed the Prophet and the emigrants into their homes during the Hijrah, and they had fought beside them in every battle. They felt that after the death of the Prophet, it was their duty to ensure the Muslim community had a leader to guide and protect it from both internal unrest and external threats. Ansar were aware that the unity of Muslims was fragile. Some tribes had only embraced Islam recently, and the news of the Prophet's passing might tempt them to break away. They believed quick action was needed, and so they discussed appointing a leader from among themselves. Sa'd ibn Ubadah, a respected chief of the Khazraj tribe, was the favored choice of many in the gathering. He was known for his generosity and leadership, but he was also suffering from illness at the time and could barely speak. The discussion was passionate, and some voices suggested that the Ansar alone should choose the next leader, while others proposed a shared leadership where one leader would be from the Ansar and another from the Muhajirun. Meanwhile, news of the gathering reached Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. They quickly realized the importance of the situation. If a decision was made without the participation of the Muhajirin, it could cause division and weaken the unity that the Prophet had built. Umar urged that they must go immediately to Saqifah to join the discussion before a decision was finalized. Along with Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, they made their way to the hall. When they arrived, they found the Ansar deeply engaged in debate. Sa'd ibn Ubadah lay wrapped in a cloak listening as his supporters spoke on his behalf. One of the Ansar reminded the gathering that they were the ones who had sheltered Islam when it was weak, and that the Quran had praised them for their sacrifices. He argued that they had the right to leadership after the Prophet's death. Umar listened but refrained from speaking until Abu Bakr took the floor. Abu Bakr acknowledged the great status of the Ansar and praised their service to Islam. He reminded everyone that the Prophet had said the leader should be from the Quraysh, because the Arabs respected that tribe and were more likely to follow their leadership. He explained that this was not a matter of tribal pride, but of practical wisdom to keep the Arab tribes united. Abu Bakr then presented a solution that he hoped would honor both the Ansar and the Muhajirin. He proposed two men for the role of leader: Umar ibn al-Khattab and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, both of whom were from the Muhajirin and had been close companions of the Prophet. Abu Bakr said that either of them could take the position, but he himself did not put his own name forward. His humility and sincerity made a strong impression on those present. Umar immediately spoke up, saying that Abu Bakr was the most deserving. Of all, he reminded the gathering that the Prophet had chosen Abu Bakr to lead the prayers in his absence, and that this was a sign of his trust. Umar insisted that no one could take precedence over Abu Bakr in leadership. Abu Ubaidah also supported this view, calling Abu Bakr the best among them after the Prophet, and the one who had been the closest to him in companionship and sacrifice. The Ansar listened carefully, and their own leaders began to consider the importance of unity over personal preference. Some of them admitted that it was better for the leader to be someone who could command respect from all tribes of Arabia, and that a Qurayshi leader might prevent disputes in the future. However, not everyone agreed, and there was still hesitation. Bashir ibn Sa'd, a respected man from the Ansar, stood up and addressed his people. He warned them against competing for leadership in a way that might cause division. He reminded them that their sacrifices had always been for Allah and His messenger, and not for worldly authority. His words softened the hearts of many in the hall at this moment. Umar stepped forward and extended his hand to Abu Bakr, pledging allegiance to him as the leader of the Muslims. Abu Ubaidah did the same. Seeing this, several others followed, including many from the Ansar. The pledge was done there in Saqifah, though not every companion was present. It was a decisive moment that secured a leader for the community before the day ended, but it also left some companions feeling that the process had been rushed and that they had not been consulted, especially Ali ibn Abi Talib and a few others who were occupied with preparing the burial of the Prophet. After the gathering at Saqifah, Abu Bakr went to the mosque where the Muslims had assembled. Umar addressed the people, first speaking about the need for a leader and the choice that had been made. Then Abu Bakr stood before them and gave a humble speech. He told them that he had not sought leadership, and that if they saw him acting rightly, they should support him, but if they saw him doing wrong, they should correct him. He reminded them that he was not the best among them, but he had been chosen to serve, and that obedience to him was required so long as he obeyed Allah and his messenger. His words reassured many who feared that leadership might become a matter of pride or oppression. Despite this public pledge, some companions remained apart. Ali ibn Abi Talib, along with a few others, delayed giving their allegiance. Their reasons were connected to both the suddenness of the decision and their belief that the Prophet had left certain indications in favor of Ali. Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, was also grieved over the loss of her father and had unresolved issues concerning the land of Fadak, which she believed had been given to her by the Prophet. These matters would add to the complexity of early Muslim politics. In the days that followed, Abu Bakr began his role as the first Caliph of Islam. His immediate challenge was to stabilize the community, as news spread that several tribes outside Medina were refusing to pay zakat or were turning away from Islam altogether. The unity of the Ummah would be tested in the Ridda Wars, but within Medina, the question of leadership had been settled, at least for the time being. Yet the memory of the Saqifah meeting remained strong in the minds of many and over the generations. It would be viewed differently by various groups, some seeing it as a wise and necessary decision, others as a missed opportunity for a different path. The events at Saqifah showed both the determination of the companions to preserve unity and the human nature of their disagreements. It was a moment shaped by urgency, loyalty, and the need to protect the mission of Islam after the passing of its prophet. This decision would set the course for the history of the Muslim world and plant the roots of the differences that in time would grow into a permanent division between Sunni and Shia, the caliphate of Abu Bakr and Umar, and the growing divide when Abu Bakr assumed the leadership of the Muslim Ummah after the pledge at Saqifah. His greatest concern was to preserve the unity of the believers and safeguard the religion that the Prophet Muhammad had delivered. The grief over the loss of the Prophet was still fresh, yet the challenges that confronted the new caliph were immediate and grave. Reports came from across Arabia that certain tribes refused to pay the zakat, while others openly declared that they would no longer follow the laws of Islam. Some even claimed prophethood for themselves and gathered followers. This was a dangerous moment, because the unity of the Muslims had been built through years of struggle, and now it threatened to break. Apart, Abu Bakr stood firm in his decision. That zakat was an obligation, just like prayer, and could not be abandoned. When Umar initially advised leniency toward those who still prayed but withheld zakat, Abu Bakr replied that he would fight anyone who separated prayer from zakat, and that even if they refused a single rope used for charity that they used to give during the Prophet's time, he would not leave them until they gave it again. This resolve led to the Ridda Wars, in which the Muslim army fought the rebellious tribes and defeated the false prophets like Musaylima in the fierce Battle of Yamama. These campaigns not only brought unity back to the Arabian Peninsula, but also preserved the economic and political stability of the state. During this time, Ali ibn Abi Talib still delayed his pledge of allegiance to Abu Bakr. His main focus was on caring for the family of the Prophet and dealing with the personal grief they all shared. Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet, had a dispute with Abu Bakr over the property of Fadak. She believed it had been given to her by the Prophet, while Abu Bakr insisted that the Prophet had said that prophets do not leave inheritance, and whatever they leave is charity. The disagreement caused pain to Fatima, and she remained distant from Abu Bakr for the rest of her life. It was only after her passing that Ali gave his public pledge of allegiance, recognizing the need for unity among the Muslims despite their differences over the events following the Prophet's death. Abu Bakr's caliphate lasted only 2 years, but during that short period he laid the foundation for the expansion of Islam beyond Arabia. Before his death, he appointed Umar ibn al-Khattab as his successor after consulting with senior companions. Abu Bakr trusted Umar's strength, justice, and commitment to Islam, and believed he would lead with firmness. Umar was known for his strong personality and his deep sense of fairness. When Abu Bakr passed away, the Muslims pledged allegiance to Umar, and thus began a new chapter in the leadership of the Ummah. Under Umar, the Muslim state expanded rapidly. The armies of Islam marched into the lands of the Byzantine and Sassanid empires, both of which were weakened by long wars with each other. In a series of remarkable victories, the Muslims captured Damascus, Jerusalem, Egypt, and vast territories in Persia. Umar was a careful and just ruler who personally oversaw the welfare of the people. He established an administrative system that included the recording of soldiers' stipends and the appointment of governors, with strict rules against corruption. He was known for walking through the streets of Madinah at night to check on the condition of the people and to make sure no one was neglected. Despite these successes, the early differences among Muslims did not disappear completely. The memory of the Saqifah decision and the belief held by some that Ali should have been the first leader remained in the minds of certain companions and their followers. While Umar and Ali worked together for the good of the Ummah, their views on some matters were different. Umar often consulted Ali on important decisions, recognizing his knowledge and closeness to the Prophet. Ali's wisdom was valued, but the fact that he had not been chosen as the first or second caliph became a point of reflection for those who supported him. Above others, the political unity during Umar's time was strong, but there were undercurrents of disagreement on issues such as leadership succession and the rights of the family of the Prophet. Umar tried to avoid future disputes by creating a council to choose the next caliph instead of naming a single successor outright. This council included 6 respected companions, among whom was Ali. Umar's reasoning was to ensure a fair choice after his death and to prevent any one group from claiming that leadership had been taken. Without proper consultation, Umar's rule ended in tragedy when he was attacked by a Persian slave named Abu Lulu while leading the prayer in the mosque of Madinah. Wounded severely, Umar knew his time was short. Before his death, he instructed the Council of 6 to select the next leader from among themselves. These men were Ali ibn Abi Talib, Uthman ibn Affan, Talha ibn Ubaidullah, Zubair ibn al-Awwam, Abd ar-Rahman ibn Awf, and Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Umar urged them to make their decision quickly and to avoid division. He also asked his son Abdullah to participate in the discussions, but not to be considered for leadership. After days of consultation and discussion, the decision came down to Ali and Uthman. Abd ar-Rahman ibn Awf, who had been given the role of final mediator, asked each of them whether they would rule by the Quran, the Sunnah, and the practices of the first two caliphs. Uthman agreed fully, while Ali agreed to rule by the Quran and Sunnah, but reserved the right to make his own judgments rather than strictly follow the policies of Abu Bakr and Umar. Abd ar-Rahman chose Uthman, and the others pledged allegiance to him. Ali accepted the decision, but many of his supporters felt it was another missed chance for his leadership. During the early years of Uthman's rule, the unity of the Ummah continued, and the expansion of Islamic lands reached further into North Africa and Central Asia. However, over time complaints began to arise about the appointment of certain governors who were related to Uthman and accused of favoritism. Discontent grew in various provinces, and the seeds of rebellion were planted. Ali remained a respected figure in Medina, but did not play a direct role in governance under Uthman's caliphate. His position as a senior companion and as the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet meant that people still looked to him for guidance and justice, especially those dissatisfied with the central administration. By the time Umar's era ended and Uthman's began, the divide that would later separate Sunni and Shia was not yet a formal split, but the foundations had been laid. It was a combination of political events, different interpretations of leadership rights, and the love and loyalty many had for the family of the Prophet. These feelings remained beneath the surface during times of strong leadership, but they would erupt when political instability shook the Muslim world. Uthman's assassination, Ali's caliphate, and the first civil war, Uthman ibn Affan's caliphate, began with unity and prosperity. He was known for his generosity and piety, and under his leadership the Muslim empire expanded further into Africa, Persia, and Central Asia. Trade flourished and wealth flowed into Medina from distant lands. Yet as the years passed, dissatisfaction began to grow among certain groups. Some Muslims felt that Uthman appointed too many of his relatives from the Umayyad clan to governorships and positions of power. While many of these governors were capable and loyal to Islam, accusations of favoritism and mismanagement spread. In provinces like Egypt, Kufa, and Basra, voices of dissent became louder. Certain governors were accused of harsh rule or misuse of wealth, and when complaints reached Medina, Uthman would sometimes defend them rather than remove them immediately. His intention was to maintain stability, but to his critics, it seemed as if justice was being delayed. This gave opportunity to rebels and troublemakers to stir unrest. Some among them had political motives, while others acted out of personal grievances. Over time, groups of angry citizens began to move toward Medina to demand reforms. Uthman tried to calm the situation by speaking to the crowds, reminding them of the unity of the Ummah and warning against division. He agreed to address some of their concerns, but while he prepared to resolve matters, false letters and rumors began to circulate, claiming that he had ordered harsh actions against the protesters. This further inflamed tensions, and some of the rebels surrounded his house, cutting off food and water. Many companions, including Ali ibn Abi Talib, urged Uthman to take action or allow them to defend him, but Uthman refused to shed Muslim blood for his own protection. Ali personally tried to mediate between Uthman and the rebels, sending his sons Hasan and Hussein to guard the caliph's house. Despite these efforts, the situation worsened. On one tragic day, the rebels forced their way inside and killed Uthman while he was reading the Quran. His blood fell on the pages, and his death shocked the Muslim world. It was the first time a caliph had been murdered by Muslims themselves, and the unity of the Ummah was shattered. After Uthman's assassination, the city of Medina was filled with tension and fear. The rebels remained in the city, and the people looked for a leader who could restore order. Many turned to Ali ibn Abi Talib, whose wisdom, piety, and close relationship to the Prophet made him the natural choice in the eyes of many. Ali at first hesitated, aware of the enormous challenges ahead and the divisions already present. But under pressure from companions and the need to prevent chaos, he accepted the Pledge of Allegiance and became the fourth caliph. Ali's caliphate began during one of the most unstable periods in early Islamic history. The murder of Uthman had left deep wounds, and many of Uthman's supporters demanded that the killers be punished immediately. Ali agreed that justice was necessary, but he argued that the priority was to restore order first, because the rebels were still armed and influential in the city. Moving against them without preparation could lead to more bloodshed. Some companions accepted this reasoning, while others saw it as a delay in delivering justice. Among those who demanded immediate action were Aisha, the widow of the Prophet, and two prominent companions, Talha ibn Ubaidullah and Zubair ibn al-Awwam. They gathered supporters and marched toward Basra to rally forces for what they saw as the rightful cause of avenging Uthman's death. Ali moved his forces to meet them, hoping to negotiate peace before fighting began. For a time, it seemed an agreement might be reached, but during the night, fighting suddenly broke out between elements of both armies, likely triggered by the fighting rebels who feared that peace would lead to their punishment. This battle became known as the Battle of the Camel, named after the camel upon which Aisha rode as she directed her forces. The fighting was fierce, and many Muslims on both sides lost their lives. Ali's forces won the battle, but he treated Aisha with great respect afterward, ensuring her safe return to Medina. The deaths of Talha and Zubair, both companions of the Prophet, deeply saddened Ali and underscored the tragedy of Muslims fighting one another. After Basra, the greatest challenge came from Syria, where the governor was Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, a cousin of Uthman. Muawiyah refused to recognize Ali as caliph until Uthman's killers were punished, and he held great political and military power in the region. Negotiations between them failed, and the two sides prepared for battle. This confrontation led to the Battle of Siffin, one of the most significant and painful events in early Islamic history. The battle lasted for days with heavy losses on both sides. When victory seemed close for Ali's forces, Muawiyah's army raised copies of the Quran on their spears, calling for judgment by the Book of Allah. Ali, wary of further Muslim bloodshed, accepted arbitration, though many of his closest supporters advised against it. The decision to allow arbitration disappointed some in Ali's camp, and a group of his former followers broke away, calling themselves the Kharijites. They accused both Ali and Muawiyah of sin for agreeing to human judgment in a matter they believed should be decided only by Allah. The arbitration process ended without resolving the leadership dispute, and tensions deepened. The Kharijites soon turned violent, attacking Muslims who disagreed with them. Ali fought them in the Battle of Nahrawan, defeating them but further weakening his forces. Meanwhile, Muawiyah consolidated his control over Syria and expanded his influence. Ali's caliphate continued under constant pressure, and the atmosphere of conflict made it difficult to govern effectively. In the year 661 CE, while Ali was praying in the mosque of Kufa, he was struck with a poisoned sword by a Kharijite assassin named Ibn Muljam. Ali was gravely wounded and passed away 2 days later. His death marked the end of the era of the rightly guided caliphs. After Ali's death, his son Hazan briefly became caliph but entered into a peace agreement with Muawiyah to avoid further bloodshed, agreeing to step down on the condition that leadership would not become hereditary and that peace would be maintained. However, after Hasan's death, Muawiyah appointed his son Yazid as successor, breaking the agreement and setting the stage for further conflict. This chain of events, from the dispute over leadership after the Prophet's passing, the assassination of Uthman, the battles during Ali's caliphate, and the eventual rise of dynastic rule, created the permanent division between Sunni and Shia. The Sunnis upheld the legitimacy of all four rightly guided caliphs, while the Shia believed that leadership belonged by divine right to Ali and his descendants. Over time, theological differences developed alongside the political ones, shaping distinct traditions within the Muslim world. Though the split began as a political disagreement, the pain of those early events left a lasting mark on Muslim history. The companions of the Prophet were human and faced extraordinary challenges in preserving the unity of the Ummah. Their struggles serve as a reminder of both the strength and fragility of that unity and of the importance of justice, patience, and mutual respect in leadership. The end.